Good afternoon. Welcome to the Health and Government Operations Committee. We are so happy to be with you today. Please do not forward the Zoom link for the hearings. Staff will not allow anyone who was not invited to testify into the hearing. I asked you to encourage people to watch the hearing on YouTube. You can do that. Bill sponsor witness timing. The bill sponsor or designee is allotted 5 minutes to present the bill. 5 witnesses will each be allowed to speak for 2 minutes in support. Please stay in the hearing until the delegates have to ask questions. Next 5 witnesses will each be allowed to speak for the 2 minutes in opposition and then respond to questions. Please conclude your remarks when you hear the timer ring. Members must remain present with your video camera on during the entirety of the hearing. Members, please ask only one question of the witness. If you have other questions, you may follow up offline. Please use the raise hand right under the small icon on the participant to let me know that you have a question. If we're not done by 3:15, we will then reconvene at 3:45 and take a 30-minute break, just because we sit here for hours and it's healthy to stretch or get something to drink. And again, thank you for being with us. The bill hearing today it's actually the order: House Bill 24, House Bill 300, House Bill 157, House Bill 448, House Bill 586, House Bill 676, House Bill 199, and House Bill, the last bill, 762. We're going to start, members, and thank you for being with us today, with House Bill 24, Delegate Ivey, State Holidays, Primary Election Day. Welcome, Delegate Ivey.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
My pleasure.
Members of the committee, thank you for the work that you've been doing here throughout this legislative session. Today I'm here presenting House Bill 24, for the record, Delegate Julian Ivey. This piece of legislation would make it so our primary election day is a holiday for our state employees. It's something that we do for the general election already, and we have so many various state holidays for our state employees. This is a piece of legislation that will encourage people to participate in the electoral process, and also participating in being election judges as well. And so it's a pretty straightforward piece of legislation. I'm asking for a favorable report. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, our pleasure. Are there any questions for Delegate Ivey? And I'm going to look under the participant icon and see if I see any little blue hands up. I don't see any questions, Delegate Ivey. We are grateful for your testimony today, and we hope you have a wonderful day. And
Thank you so much.
This concludes the testimony on House Bill 24. Thank you so much. Next, we have House Bill 300, Dorchester County Delegation. And I believe we have Ms. Betsy Hamilton, who will be presenting on behalf of the delegation. And Ms. Hamilton is signing in right now. Good afternoon, Ms. Betsy Hamilton. Will you be so kind and start your testimony on House Bill 300? You have to unmute yourself. Ms. Hamilton, will you be so kind and unmute yourself?
I did, thank you.
Oh, wonderful. Can you give us your testimony, and welcome to the HGO Committee.
Thank you.
Our pleasure.
Hi, my name is Betsy with the Office of Delegate Chris Adams. Good afternoon, Madam Chair and Madam Vice Chair. I don't have my video on, I guess. Here we go.
You do not?
I'll try.
Okay.
Here I am. Thank you. Again, good afternoon, Madam Chair and Madam Vice Chair and members of the HGO Committee. For the record, my name is Betsy Hamilton. I'm the Legislative Assistant to Delegate Chris Adams, here to present House Bill 300, Commemorative Days, Maryland Voting Equity Reform Day. This bill is being introduced because in 1986, the Maryland Constitution was amended to remove the requirement that all county commissioners and council members be elected through at-large voting. Statewide at-large voting effectively disenfranchised our minority and rural populations. This bill requires the governor to annually proclaim the 4th Tuesday of October as Maryland Voting Equity Reform Day. It is important to pass this bill now to celebrate and commemorate the efforts of the 10 men from northern Dorchester County who led the effort to amend the Maryland Constitution in 1986. This bill celebrates voting equity for our minority and royal citizens across Maryland. We would ask for a favorable report on this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony today. If you can just wait, the way it works in this committee is that we take all the favorable panel, right? And then we go to the unfavorable if there are any, and then we ask questions when we're done with that panel.
Thank you.
Next, I guess Delegate Chris Adams not going to make it, correct?
No.
And then we have Dr. Carl Burnham. Good afternoon, sir. Will you be so kind and give us your testimony? You must unmute yourself. Dr. Carl, you have to unmute yourself, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, and we can see you clearly. Good afternoon.
Okay. Good
Give us
afternoon.
your testimony. Thank
Yes.
you.
Yeah. I'm speaking on behalf of the Historical Freedom Shrine Advocacy Team located in Dorchester County. Permit me to highlight and share with you 6 reasons why we strongly support House Bill 300. First, it confirms that the right to vote is a core value guaranteed to us by the Constitution. Voting is the one opportunity that makes us equal as citizens. It is a great equalizer in a democratic society. Exercising the right will improve the quality of life for many citizens. The second point, it can serve as a reminder and motivator during election time for us to reconnect and to dedicate ourselves in exercising the power of our vote. Third point, it provides a model that 10 brave men, 8 white and 2 African Americans, who worked together to improve through the political process how to make our county and state a better place to live. Fourth point, it represents a rich legacy that we can pass on to our children on how we fought for fairness and equal access to voting rights. Fifth point, it memorializes the work of 10 men by having erected in their honor in 1987 a 20,000-pound blue granite monument in Dorchester County. And point 6, it confirms that amending the Maryland Constitution in 1986 by changing from a system of at-large voting to district voting continued to increase racial minorities' leadership and participation at the local, state, and the federal level in the workforce. And finally, you are encouraged to visit Dorchester County to see and learn about this historical memorial. The monument is officially called Freedom from Political Persecution and Tyranny. However, it is more popularly known as the Historical Freedom Shrine. I ask for favorite support on this bill.
Thank you, sir, for your testimony today. We really appreciate it. Are there any questions for Ms. Hamilton or Mr. Burnham on House Bill 300? Seeing none, thank you so much for your testimony today. We really appreciate it. This concludes the bill hearing on House Bill 300. Next, we have House Bill 157, Delegate Juanita Fisher. Delegate Fisher, will you be so kind and start your testimony? You're muted.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
My pleasure.
I was watching you all on YouTube and then switching over, so I'm sorry. Thank you. I'm ready to start, Madam Chair.
You can go ahead and start. Good afternoon.
Okay. Thank you to the illustrious Health and Government Operations Committee. My name is Delegate Winika Fisher from District 47B. Today, I'm happy to reintroduce HB 1570, Indigenous Peoples Day. This is a reintroduction. You all heard this bill last year. This bill would replace Columbus Day here in the state of Maryland with Indigenous Peoples Day. Every year on October 12th, we celebrate Christopher Columbus, who, as history and previous hearings has informed us, is not someone that we really should be celebrating, someone that not only invaded other people's sovereign land, but was our first human trafficker, bringing Native Americans back and spreading disease and other ills. The truth is that this land was not discovered. It was inhabited by an Indigenous community that is thriving well and thriving here in Maryland. This proposal would change Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day and would help the Indigenous teaching and cultural history in our state. It's hard as a nation and a state to reckon with our painful past, but it's important that we do. And I think that this year, now more than ever, shows how important it is for us to speak the truth of our past in order to move forward as one state. This bill will allow us to do just that. I think it's important to speak truth in everything that we do, and the effects of this on our community are seen. If you look at the disparate and health impacts for our Indigenous community, it is well known. Words are powerful, and what we celebrate as a state is powerful. And we've seen our state move forward in so many ways on ills when it comes to slavery and other disproportionate and minority communities. This bill does just that. It is not only something that we should consider, I urge this committee to consider, but it's something that several other states have already begun to do in order to do what is right for our state. And we've also had localities here in the state of Maryland already pushed this, my home county of Prince George's County and Baltimore City. I think it shows that Maryland should be a leader on this issue. We should be joining states like Iowa, Michigan, Maine, New Mexico, Oregon, South Dakota, Wisconsin on this very issue. I hope that the committee would consider this bill. I think that we have seen throughout the state a lot of contention around the issue, but it's something that we have to err on the right side of history. And I hope that the state of Maryland is finally prepared and ready to move forward for everyone in our community. I will end my testimony there, Madam Chair, and yield my time to my esteemed panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your testimony, Delegate. We appreciate it. Next, we have Mr. Robert Ward. Good afternoon, sir. Will you be so kind and get started with your testimony?
After several emails, Mr. Ward is not with us.
Okay. How about Ms. Jennifer Follion?
Yes, I'm here.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. So thank you for having me. Thank you, Delegate Fisher. And first, I have my native drum. And I invite the ancestors and future generations to this space today where we gather on the sacred lands of the Susquehanna and Piscataway peoples. My name is Jennifer Margot Shane Falayan. I am Cherokee, Pueblo, and Aztec. I serve on the board of the Baltimore American Indian Center in Baltimore City. And my group, Indigenous Strong, worked with the Baltimore City Council last October to pass Indigenous Peoples Day for the city. I also serve on the Indigenous Task Force at Pearl Stone Retreat Center. And quite simply, the time is now, as we have seen this past year of conversations sparked by the Black Lives Matter movement. We asked for the direct replacement of Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day to show that we in Maryland want reconciliation with our Indigenous people. We must lay to rest the myth of Columbus as a national hero, as American as apple pie, and the myth that he discovered America. The history and the myth are separate, The resilience and endurance of the Italian people and indigenous people in our country is remarkable. Let Italian pride and celebrations live long. I understand that Columbus was used as a symbol for the Italian people in our country who were discriminated against and lynched for their culture and religion. The Knights of Columbus were formed, and the celebration of Columbus Day was an attempt at integration and acceptance. We're in a time now where the proof of the atrocities of Columbus are at hand, and it's disgraceful and painful to celebrate a man whose actions to bring gold back to Spain ushered in atrocities of rape, genocide, child sex slavery, and the cultural wipeout of the Taino people. Let Columbus Day be abolished and reset to lost at sea. Let it be so. And thank you so much.
Thank you for your testimony today. We appreciate it. Are there any questions for this panel? I have Delegate Hill followed by Delegate Kurd. Delegate Hill.
Thank you very much. And I don't know whether this is for the sponsor or for her panelist, but I would appreciate if you could explain to the committee, first of all, what the health implications are of the bill, particularly behavioral health, mental health of our celebrating Columbus Day, and why this is not about a separate day called Indigenous People Day, but why you think it's, or just taking out the label Columbus Day, why you think it's important to remove Columbus Day and replace it.
Yes, I can take that question. Thank you so much, Delegate Hill. Some of my other panelists weren't able to make it today, but I think I can usher that. You know, in working with the several Indigenous and Native American community members and leaders on this legislation, I think you can see the post-traumatic stress that racism and discrimination imposes on communities. I think that your committee and specifically, I have to, highlight the work of the vice chair of this committee, who is a shepherd these issues. And I think when we continue to have in our state and in everyday life that the othering and the killing and the genocide of your community just doesn't matter. It's on deaf ears. I think that creates continued stress and health outcomes. And I can only speak for myself as a Black woman and an Indian woman, the things that I experience that cause health and stress. And I think there are many studies, and I'm also happy to send the committee. I submitted some references in my testimony, but I will send others of what these kind of discrimination and actions have on people's actual health outcomes. And so that's why I think things are more important than just a name. As this committee well knows more than this judiciary member, the mental health implications in our communities, and especially our communities of color, including our Native American Indigenous. So I really thank you for that question. And I think that this bill will help bring that healing and cathartic movement forward.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Delegate Kerr.
Thank you, Madam Chairman.
My pleasure.
I think my question's from Ms. Follian. We've come out of well, possibly we're still in a period where we've seen increased violence against Indigenous people and immigrants. And so I guess what I'm asking of you is, what do you think continuing to celebrate Columbus Day does about these types of acts of violence against Indigenous persons and minorities? And what do you think will change if this bill gets enacted?
Thank you. As of today, 4 out of 5 of our Native women are affected by violence. Now, we have a huge missing, murdered Indigenous women movement that shows that, violence against our women is continuing even today. I know in Baltimore City, we have problems with identification where we're not able to classify ourselves. And I believe that, as we've seen in the last year, the shot around the world with George Floyd, is like, what is it going to take to have reconciliation in our country? And I believe that replacing Columbus Day with Indigenous Peoples Day allows that conversation for reconciliation, for the truth to come out, for our communities to heal and really celebrate, you know, Italians, awesome, Indigenous people, awesome. But it's not just that we want a day to celebrate, it's that we want to correct history, that Columbus is not an American hero, and these violence and atrocities cannot continue to go on.
Thank you, and thank you, Madam Chairman.
My pleasure. Deborah Shalega.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Pleasure.
This question would be for Delegate Fisher. I'm sorry, I'm looking for you on my, there you are. Sorry, it's confusing when you're trying to talk to someone and there's so many faces on the screen. So you mentioned in your testimony that Columbus was the first human trafficker. I'm wondering where you got that information. I mean, the well-known trafficking of Genghis Khan and the Roman Empire were certainly far before Christopher Columbus was even thought. So what can you tell us about that statement that you made?
Yes, thank you, Delegate Schlega. Always good to see you. And sorry if I misspoken. I meant in the American context of human trafficking. So when he came to this country, he specifically brought Indigenous folks and Native American or Native American folks back. So that's what I meant, not in the sense of human history altogether as the human existence around the world. But I think that, you know, the work I've done in my own committee on labor trafficking and human trafficking is serious. And I'm very happy that our Maryland General Assembly actually passed labor trafficking 2 years ago as a crime. And so to celebrate someone that actually participated in human and labor trafficking, I just don't think it's something that we should be doing. So I would love to correct my statement, Delegate. I didn't mean it in the first ever of that action. I meant it in the regards of in the known American context, but I wouldn't also tout myself as a total historian to this committee at all, but I have done research on this area in this particular bill. Yeah, that would be my response to that question.
Okay, thank you. And finally, I've taken quite a few classes on living in Colorado, visiting Anasazi ruins and finding a great deal of interest in the culture of Native Americans. There are 574 recognized tribes in the United States, and I can tell you that some of them did traffic each other. So are you going to amend the bill to get rid of tribes where we have evidence where there were things that were going on that were counter to what you're trying to do here?
No, I would not be amending the bill in that way, Delegate Shalega. I think for me, I think Ms. Fulton really communicated it even better than I did of the celebration of a false history. I don't think anyone's people, and again, it's on these issues, it's very hard to speak, to be very forthcoming to this committee. I don't want to speak for, as a Black person, I can't speak for all Black people, right? So I don't want to be in a context to speak for all peoples, but this is a specific individual that you have known history on, that you're celebrating in a national, in a very poignant way, and in a way in our state. And so I think that's what really needs to be corrected. I don't think any community or anyone's history, any nation's history is perfect. I think what your committee wrestles with the bills you're hearing today, several of them, and as you do, you wrestle with we have an imperfect Maryland history and a United States history. It doesn't make me less proud to be a Marylander, right? Or to be a US citizen, but we have to reckon with our past. And I don't think you could sit here as a Marylander and say, that things were accurate or people were treated well, or even honestly, all the amazing colors and shapes and gender that I see on this screen are treated fully equally today. You can't say that. That's not true. And so I think that's what this bill is really getting to the heart of.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Thank you. Next, we have Delegate Charles.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This question here is for the bill sponsor. She had mentioned about cultural awareness, and what I'm looking to get from her is to understand, by changing this particular title of the date, how do we see true changes, and how does this help bring more awareness for cultural awareness?
Delegate Charles, would you mind if I had Ms. Flan speak to that, or would you like me to specifically speak to that?
You can actually
whoever you think is
choose.
best.
Oh, I can choose?
Choose who's best.
Okay, yeah. Ms. Flan, do you mind taking that question?
Sure. I think the first step is to change the date. October tied to Columbus. So we're asking, as I said, to dispel the myth of Columbus, that he's not a national hero, he didn't discover America. And in attempts to have our people, Indigenous people, that would be the first step. Then, of course, there could be future conversations. What does reconciliation look like? Canada's had several of these kinds of conversations to kind of unpack that. But specifically, October is tied to Columbus's diaries when he supposedly landed, which was down in Haiti. And that's why we're asking for the specific removal of that date for Columbus Day.
Thank you very much. Next question, Delegate Bagnall.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to the bill sponsor. As somebody who spent years working with First Nations artists from Maryland and across the Americas, I really appreciate this bill. My question is the difference between Native American Heritage Day, the day after Thanksgiving, which I believe is central to Maryland Indigenous peoples, versus this change for Indigenous peoples on Columbus Day. If you can just speak to how they're different, if this is part of a larger narrative, just so we have clarification in the committee. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So the day after Columbus Day is just in the state of Maryland, not nationally, is Native American History Day. Most people, well, I'm not gonna say most people, a lot of people don't know that. I didn't know that until, just being honest, till I was elected to the Maryland General Assembly. And that was the great work of Delegate Talmadge Branch, who has shepherded so many issues and wins for our Native American Indigenous community. So that is there. But I think the difference with this bill, so that was done at before I was here, and actually several parts of the legislature were elected. So this bill is really to ratify the issue and rectify the issue, around celebrating Christopher Columbus. And we've seen our locals address this issue, and we've seen nationally other states, as I listed some, but the testimony you have has the full list, have faced this issue. So I think that really is the crux of this bill and this issue, and also to celebrate our Indigenous population. And it sort of dovetails with Delegate Charles's question about cultural awareness. Like I said, I think the work done for the day after Thanksgiving in our state was great legislation and done well, but it doesn't have a teaching mandate. And due to the nature of Black Friday, sadly, the commercial aspects of kind of Thanksgiving and all of that, if you surveyed the average Marylander, they probably really aren't aware. And so having Christopher Columbus Day be Indigenous Peoples Day is going to be something that's known, that's seen in calendars and throughout our state, and really changing the tone of how we speak about our Indigenous population and their respect and their honor in our state. So I think that's the big difference. Again, it's a bill I'm submitting to this illustrious committee. If there were different changes or takes to the legislation, if it was to be taken up, I would be happy to work with the guidance of your great chairwoman and vice chair to, adjust the bill to what you all would deem appropriate.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next question by Delegate Krebs, followed by Delegate Johnson. Delegate Krebs.
It seems after listening to the testimony that a lot of this has to do with Christopher Columbus, the person, versus what he stood for his group of people. So is that correct, that it's more about getting rid of Christopher Columbus than about indigenous people, or is it both?
I think it's both, Delegate Krebs.
I would just like to know, because it seems like people that are really opposed to it are the Italian Americans who, Christopher Columbus sort of was a symbol for them, a positive symbol. So if we switched it to an Italian American Day and at least kept it in the vein, would that be something that would split the baby with the bathwater, that we at least have, you got rid of Columbus, but we still honor the Italian Americans that came to this country?
I really couldn't, that's an interesting idea. I really couldn't speak to that as the will of your committee. I would say for me as a sponsor and for folks that have testified in years past and the testimony that you have today, I do think that there's a real intentionality in this bill to celebrate our Indigenous community, and then that shouldn't be lost. I will briefly, Madam Chair, I know I'm running short on time, say that, in years past, I had like 2 different types of bills, Delegate Krebs, to kind of move holidays around and restructure. But when I actually talked to the community, I actually went to a Native American Council meeting. I went to the last one, and there's one coming up, I think next week, that I'm supposed to attend. The community, the Native American Indigenous community, was comfortable with this bill, changing Christopher Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day. So I did not personally feel comfortable doing something outside of that. So I would say I would leave those decisions and discussion to this committee to speak to all the stakeholders if it was something you were to consider.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Delegate Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And thank you, Delegate, for bringing us this bill. Can you tell us, any other states that changed it, did they add Indigenous Peoples Day, or did they do away with Columbus Day?
So thank you for that question, Delia. Let me just pull up my notes. So some states, I can give you a full breakdown. The states that I have listed actually do not celebrate Christopher Columbus Day. That would be Hawaii, Maine, New Mexico, Oregon, South Dakota, Vermont, Iowa, Louisiana, Michigan, Minnesota, North Carolina, Wisconsin. And some of them were able to create the holiday, like similar to our state, they might have had an Indigenous or a Native American holiday before. So they varied slightly, but that list, from my knowledge, does not celebrate a state holiday anymore in their states. But I can send you, I have a Pew Research article that it has each state listed and kind of what they did to rectify that. And I'll send that directly to the committee if I haven't already.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
So welcome.
My pleasure. I don't see any other question for this favorable panel. Thank you so much for your testimony today. Next,
thank you, Madam Chair. Both
my pleasure. Our pleasure. Next, we have the unfavorable panel. Mr. Good afternoon.
Hello, Chair and Committee. Thank you so much.
Mr. Maccabi, I have not called you yet.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Mr. Mecca Mohammed? Is he in, Melissa?
Yes, he is. He just needs to unmute himself.
Sir, good afternoon. Will you be so kind and unmute yourself, Mr. Mohammed? You have to unmute yourself, sir. Mr. Mecca Mohammed, will you be so kind and unmute yourself? Okay. Mr. Pika.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, I've listened closely to the testimony, and I'll just say that the sponsor talked about listening to the community. Nobody contacted anybody in the Italian American community, to my knowledge. I could have had dozens of people testify, but we did this in the Senate, and I decided that that I would just testify by myself. You're taking a holiday away from Italian Americans. It's been established for close to 100 years, but the official holiday was declared by President Johnson in 1968. So while you're gaining something for Indigenous people, and I think they deserve a holiday, you're taking something away from a group of people. So just keep that in mind when you're doing this. I am chairman of Columbus Celebrations, and I chair the Italian Heritage Festival, which draws over 2,000 people to Little Italy every year, and chairman of the Columbus Parade, which is the longest consecutive running parade in America. This is its 129th year. So what I would like to suggest and insist is that with all due respect, you rename Columbus Day Italian Heritage Day, and you can keep Indigenous Peoples Day on this day, or the day that President Clinton and Governor O'Malley declared it as the day after Thanksgiving. The Italian people did not come over here on those ships. That was the people from Spain. Columbus wasn't even here most of the time. He made 4 voyages across the Atlantic. And if you don't think that was an act of bravery, I'm an avid sailor and a sailboat racer. I can take you out in the Chesapeake Bay on a windy night and make you wish you never got on a sailboat again. He crossed the Atlantic Ocean, and that opened up the gateway for people in Europe to get to America. Nonetheless, I would ask that if you're going to pass the bill, that you rename Columbus Day Italian Heritage Day. I know that Delegate Mangione.
You have to wrap up, Delegate. We have to wrap up, Mr. Pica.
Okay, I think I stated my case. I just hope that you'll support that amendment. It's being drafted. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Our pleasure. Next, we have Mr. McColby. Vince McColby.
All right, can you hear me all right?
We can hear you.
Great, thank you so much, committee. Thank you, Chair. I'm so glad that Senator Pica brought up the bill from as it was heard last week, because there was belligerence by the sponsor who talked over those people. And I just want to say, I hope that is not why the other 2 or 3 people that came with Mr. Pica last week didn't show, that they were shown discourtesy, that they were shown belligerence, talking while they were giving testimony. That's wrongful. That's not how we handle things. And I think that's the spirit of this bill. I'm pleased that the Indian representative, and I do want to swing back to Native American, changed her understanding of facts since last week, because she updated her testimony from last week's testimony. I appreciate that. But I do find it difficult when the sponsor of this bill wants to speak to history and then gets the history wrong or half true or incomplete when they present the bill. And I think if any of us look back 600 years, we see it was a different time. These people traveled the seas, living by the stars. So what's not mentioned is that Columbus fought tribes who lived pagan lives, including child sacrifices, I believe. I'm not a historian either, okay? But I do want to swing back to Indigenous People Day. We did take the nation from them, and they're not doing well. So when the lady talked about abuse, it's happening on their own tribe lands. They have rampant alcoholism and child abuse. Stats show 22% binge drinking. And we should help them. We really should. They were here before us. So I hope we do that. But there, as a fact is right now, we don't have a little Indian neighborhood, but we do in Baltimore have one of the best preserved Little Italys in the nation. And, I think that we need to judge. How are they going to judge us? I live in Baltimore. We have 300 deaths a year. They're going to look back and judge us too.
Sir, you have to wrap up.
All right. So, Delegate, thank you so much for the time, for queuing me on, and for hearing this. I think some perspective and balance is truly in order. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Mr. Mecca Mohammed. Mr. Mohammed, will you be so kind and unmute yourself? I see you're there, but you're muted.
Hello?
Yes.
Okay. Earlier I had technical difficulties and I'm a ma'am. I do apologize.
It's okay. Not a problem. It happens. It's the age we're living in. Will you be so kind and give us your testimony today, please?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm in disagreement for changing Columbus Day to Indigenous Peoples Day. Now, this is personal because my ex-husband and my children are half Native American. So this is a this is a hard bill to think about. However, I am in agreement with Mr. Peaker that I don't believe that the Indigenous Peoples Day, Columbus Day should be changed. I think this is because Columbus Day is directed as Delegate Select said, directed as, or another delegate stated, directed as Columbus himself, his character, not in the great things that Columbus stands for for the Italian community. Furthermore, if that is the case, then it will be like removing the presidents that are on our dollar bills, because some of those presidents were slave owners, and there will be a post-traumatic distress disorder problem towards the Black community. But in any way, I strongly disagree with this bill. I think that the bill should be proposed as Italian Heritage Day and to keep Indigenous Peoples Day in the manner that it is.
Thank you for your testimony, ma'am. We really appreciate it. Are there any questions for this panel? Seeing none, thank you so much. This concludes the bill hearing on House Bill 157. Have a great afternoon. Next, we have House Bill 448, Delegate Harrison, State Government Legal and Employee Holiday, June National Freedom Day. Thank you. Good afternoon, Delegate. Delegate Harrison, you have to unmute yourself.
I'm sorry.
It's okay, it happens to all of us. Good afternoon, and welcome to our committee.
And now I have to, I'm sorry, I was on my other committee.
It's okay.
My standing committee. Thank you so much, and I apologize.
No need to apologize. Take your time.
Okay. Well, good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the Health and Government Operations Committee. For the record, I am Andrea Fletcher Harrison, here to present HB 448, an act concerning county government, legal and employee holiday, Juneteenth National Freedom Day, respectfully requesting a favorable report on this bill. As we know, Juneteenth commemorates the date, June 19th, 1865, 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation and 2 months after the end of the Civil War, when hundreds of thousands of enslaved men and women in Texas finally learned they had been freed. It is an important milestone in American culture. It represents the resistance and resilience of Black people in America. All but 4 states in the country currently recognize Juneteenth as a day of recognition of the emancipation of enslaved people here in America. Maryland is one of those states. Sponsored by former Delegate Melvin Stooks and signed into law in 2014, it is considered a day of commemoration. In the final whereas clause of Chapter 602, which was House Bill 549, 2014, which made Juneteenth a commemorative holiday in the state of Maryland, it reads, whereas Juneteenth National Freedom Day, which recalls how slaves hated slavery and celebrated its abolishment with excitement and great joy, serves as a reminder to all Americans of the status and importance of Americans of African descent. Now, therefore, be it enacted that the governor annually shall proclaim Juneteenth as Juneteenth National Freedom Day. But to date, there has been very little done to truly appreciate the blood, sweat, and tears of those Blacks who built this state by way of their servitude. While there have been Juneteenth celebrations to occur around the country, they have not always been welcomed. It's time for us to celebrate this as a paid holiday, whether or not you identify as Black. Just because we abolished slavery doesn't mean the work to end systemic racism has ended. Juneteenth should serve as a reminder that it's up to all of us to be part of the solution. The recent deaths of Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd sparked a revolution, and these tragedies have forced people around the world to open their eyes to the plight of Black people in this country. It is important to recognize that Black Americans have been fighting for justice since this country's inception. The struggles of systemic racism, Black people have talked about consistently, the overt and covert displays of racism and the suffering that, quite frankly, many Blacks have silently endured has affected this nation and continues to this day. Juneteenth is an important day to recognize, celebrate, observe, and realize we have not fully addressed our past in a way that needs to be done. Making Juneteenth a paid state holiday, joining Virginia, Texas, New York, and Pennsylvania is a step that we as lawmakers can do to show we recognize, understand, and value the plight of Black people in Maryland and appreciate their past and continued contributions to our great state. With this being said, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee, I again respectfully request a favorable report on HB 448. Thank you very much.
Our pleasure. Thank you for your testimony today. Next, we have on your panel, Mr. Carl Barnham. Mr. Barnham, good afternoon again. Will you be so kind and give us your testimony?
My understanding is that Mr. Barham signed up for the wrong bill, so he will.
Oh, he did? Okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. We have Mr. Williams. Mr. Williams, good afternoon.
And Mr. Williams is unfortunately unable to be with us today.
He's not showing?
No. No, we've
Okay.
called and emailed him several times.
Okay. So are there any questions for the delegate on House Bill 448? Seeing none, thank you so much, Delegate, for your presentation. This concludes the bill hearing on House Bill 448. Have a great afternoon. Next, we have our pleasure. House Bill 586, Delegate Watson. General Provisions, Commemorative Day, Tuskegee Airmen Commemoration Day. Good afternoon, Delegate Watson.
Good afternoon, Madam Vice Chair. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for being with us today. Will you be so kind and start your testimony on House Bill 586? Thank you so much.
Yes. Good afternoon, members of the committee. I first want to thank everyone for an opportunity to present this bill before you today. In the words of writer Robert Heinlein, a generation which ignores history has no past and no future. Today, I'm proud to present to you the opportunity not only to appreciate history that has already been made by our valued American heroes, but to make history as well. House Bill 586 will allow us as a state to collectively acknowledge and memorialize the contributions made by an elite group of soldiers who valiantly fought for our country, the Tuskegee Airmen. The airmen made countless sacrifices even while facing unthinkable wartime conditions, segregations, and racism. Nevertheless, these brave men dedicated their lives to protecting the rights and freedoms of all Americans with no hesitation when they answered their call of duty. House Bill 586 will recognize the fourth Thursday in March as Tuskegee Airmen Commemoration Day for the state of Maryland and seeks to urge educational and cultural organizations to observe this day through informative programs and activities. This bill made it out of the Senate last session after passing favorably by a full vote of 47-0 and was in the process of coming across the street, but unfortunately was postponed due to the pandemic outbreak. Nevertheless, we are faced with an opportunity to finish the job and make things right. Let's give these brave and honorable heroes the recognitions they truly deserve. It's for these reasons I ask this committee for a favorable report on House Bill 586. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Next, we have Mr. George Owens. Good afternoon, sir. Will you be so kind and start your testimony? Mr. Owens?
Madam Chair, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you clearly.
Okay, thank you so very much. I'd like to thank Delegate Watson for putting this bill in. I'd like to thank Maryland Commissioner Franklin Killebrew for bringing this back once again. As you've heard, the bill has already come out from the Senate clearly. You all would have passed it last year, but I need to just embellish it a little bit. George Owens, Secretary of Veterans Affairs, for the record. These men that we're talking about have fought 2 wars, and they fought them simultaneously. The first war was World War II, and they did it courageously as a brand new group of men who had heretofore been denied entry into the war because of their skin color. Pure and simple. The United States did not recognize them as the true warriors that they are. The second that they fought was the war of discrimination, not only during their time in the service, but also when they returned home. Now, what does it mean to return home? Governor Hogan's first bill in 2015 was a bill that recognized Welcome Home Vietnam. I waited 47 years to hear that, along with 58, 60, 200,000 others that spent time on that on that war. But be that as it may, it was comforting to at least hear it acknowledged. The Tuskegee Airmen are still waiting to hear that. What you don't know is there's only one state in the Union that recognizes the Tuskegee Airmen and memorializes the 4th Thursday of March as their day. That state is Arizona. I'm hoping today that we can join them in their battle. I suppose, Delegate Watson, you're going to show the film, I guess, a little bit later, but there's a film out by Captain Marcel Trott that's explosive, and I hope that you all get to see that. I will go on to say this simply that on July the 28th, 2018, there was a 24-year-old Tuskegee Airman whose remains were finally reclaimed. He was buried in Arlington, but he left behind a wife and a very young daughter, who now is my age. I'm 76, so his daughter must be at least that old, but that's what he left behind, giving his life for his country. And I just think it's time now that we recognize these warriors. What does it mean to Maryland? Simply, we have in our midst a Brigadier General Charles McGee, a Marylander, who his recognition was long overdue. But I say that to say this: in Maryland, the East, the East chapter of the Tuskegee Airmen has an active youth and aviation program teaching our high school students who are interested in aviation at Joint Base Andrews in Prince George's County. There's no greater connection to the Tuskegee Airmen than our own students right here in Maryland learning about aviation and, more importantly, the history. Madam Chair, I could go on and on, but I don't think it's necessary. You all know, and you've seen this bill before, and I'm just hoping that with the support of the department that we can see this bill come to fruition this year. Thank you all very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for your time today. We really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Next, we have Ms. Deborah Keith. Ms. Keith, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. I am Deborah Keith. I am director of the East Coast chapter Tuskegee Airmen, the largest of the 50 chapters nationwide. 16,000 plus men and women served in World War II as Tuskegee Airmen, including 350 pilots who flew over 15,000 combat missions, destroying 111 planes in the air and 150 on the ground. My uncles, John Edwards and Jerome Edwards, were brothers from Steubenville, Ohio, assigned to the 99th Tuskegee Airmen Fighter Squadron. Jerome was killed when his aircraft developed engine trouble. His brother John went on to join the 301st Fighter Squadron and destroyed 2 of the 111 aircraft destroyed by the 332nd Fighter Group, known as the Red Tails. He flew in 100 combat missions with such distinguished pilots as Brigadier General Charles McGee, who turned 101 years of age on December 7th, 2020. We also honor our own chapter donors: Lemuel Louis, Clarence Dart, William Wilson, Major Anderson, John Curry, William Fontroy Jr., Carl Johnson, Herbert Jones Jr., Lawyer Martin, Walter Robinson, Edward J. Talbert, Dr. Ivan Ware, and Dr. Barham Cyril. We also, our chapter also has an annual Benjamin O. Davis Golf Classic. And each year, and the tournament is in honor of Benjamin O. Davis, commander of the 332nd Fighter Group, which included the 99th, the 103rd, the 302nd, and the 101st Fire Squadrons. Our chapter also has the annual holiday gala, and our chapter recognizes high school graduates with youth and aviation, a youth recognition breakfast. These are our three major fundraisers as nonprofit organizations. So the East Coast chapter is dedicated to the preservation of the Tuskegee legacy and the education of our youth. Last year, our chapter awarded 21 $1,000 scholarships.
Ma'am, you have to start wrapping up.
Okay, and so we would like to have our youth and aviation program and everything that we do, the chapter for 15 flight hours, our students pass with FAA flight tests. One graduate has selected as the Air Force Outstanding Air Traffic Controller, and that is what you're going to hear with Marcel Trott. And we would like to we're asking the delegates of the House to vote and pass this bill of the 586, which will recognize the accomplishment of the men and women who fought against fascism in World War II to make this a better world. We are asking that this day be a day of commemoration to honor the proud members of the organization in Maryland.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions? And thank you for your work. We appreciate it. Any questions for this panel? Delegate Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Who is best suited to answer the question? Do you know how many Marylanders were Tuskegee Airmen by any chance?
I'm sorry, what is the question?
Do you know how many Marylanders were Tuskegee Airmen by any chance? Anybody on the panel?
We have several that are still living in the state of Maryland, but it's about 12 or 14, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
And Delegate Johnson, we also had a very prominent one.
We're only allowed to have one person that answers.
One person, all right.
But can you just give us the name quickly?
Charles Herbert Flowers. We got a high school named after him.
Yeah. All right, thank you.
And
any
an airport.
Questions? Any other questions for this panel?
We have an airport named after Herbert.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your testimony today. This concludes the on House Bill 586. We appreciate your testimony. Thank you. Next.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Our pleasure. You're welcome. House Bill 676, Delegate Bandari, General Provisions, Commemorative Days, that's Shane Day. I hope I pronounced it correctly. Forgive me if I did not.
No, you did. Thank you, my Vice Chair. And I would like to confirm Militia is my panel in the room. I will start. Good afternoon, Chair Pendergrass, Vice Chair Peña Melnick, and my fellow colleagues in the Health and Government Operations Committee. For the record, Delegate Bandari today to present HB 676, General Provisions Commemorative Days, Dasai Day. For background, Dasai is a holiday that originated in Nepal and is celebrated in many other countries in that vicinity, including India, Bhutan, Bangladesh. It is the celebration of good winning over evil, and it spans 2 weeks. Over the past 2 decades, the Nepali diaspora has grown, with Maryland being one of the main points for immigrants from Nepal, as well as other nearby counties. As of 2010 census, Maryland had 5th largest Nepalese population in the country. As of 2018, that number was estimated going over 25,000. And Maryland continued to be a draw for people from this region, with immigration from Bhutan and Bangladesh also on the rise. Maryland continues to be a major landing point for people from those parts of the world, with major population centers located in Baltimore County, Baltimore City, Prince George County, and Montgomery County. And those who come over continue to be hardworking, exemplary people. There are doctors, nurses, business owners, volunteers, frontline workers, and more. President Biden recently condemned vicious hate crimes against Asian Americans. This community has grappled with anxiety and fear. Violence against them spiked during the pandemic. Most recently, a Nepali American Uber named Suvakar Kharka driver was attacked in San Francisco for trying to enforce a mask mandate. He was taunted because of his race, because of where he came from. Hate crimes against Asian Americans have spiked by 150% during the pandemic, even as overall hate crime declined. Acknowledging Dasai would go a long way toward showing solidarity and support for a community that is so desperate need of both at the moment. A part of what makes our state and country great is the fact that there is such a cultural blend. Acknowledging Dasai would further enable this blending to occur. By acknowledging Dasai, a more comforting and understanding environment can be created throughout our state, including in the business world, in government, in a school system. Over the years, we have come to acknowledge a number of holidays of importance for culture, whose population have grown. And I believe it is the time we do the same for Dasai. This population will continue to grow, brought the opposite aggression in the Asian American community. It will create a sense of belonging in their new home. We already acknowledge this population with the MBA, including Nepali and Hindi language and official forms, but taking that acknowledgement of population growth a step further and recognizing and commemorating this holiday would be a major step to show support for this community. It is also the mirror image of long-standing prejudices regarding Asian or Hispanic, ethnically undifferentiated masses of mainly identical people. Such legislation will defy this notion, lumping people and their culture together, and it will further deconstruct the Asian American minority myth, help our student at college and university to know more about Asian American studies, and advances diversity. The discourse of Asian American political participation is continually evolving. Issues ranging from model minority myth to democratic change to forever non-voter status. Recently, as a part of my PhD program at UMBC, I sent a survey on the political and linguistic integration of this minority group. I received 465 surveys back, 465 surveys back. The majority of them think that they are not recognized and they do not have a voice. Unfortunately, only 3% of Asian American contact their elected officer in their lifetime. I would like to thank all those who are here to testify on behalf of this bill. And I would like to thank those who have submitted written testimony. My panel today includes Saroj Prajapati of Nepal Education and Cultural Center, Arya Acharya Bana, and Supriya Ghimire of the Non-Resident of Nepalese in America, NRNA. Written testimony and support was also provided by Dr. Uttam Gauli, professor at Morgan State University and president of Star Scholars Network, Dr. Karki, a commission member on South Asian American Affairs Commission, Sham Karki, and the AAPI caucus. I thank you for your time. I respectfully request a favorable report on HB 676.
Thank you, Delegate Bandari. We appreciate your testimony. Next, we have Gimir.
Hi, my name is Supriya Gimire.
Wonderful. Good afternoon. Will you be so kind and give us your testimony?
Yes, of course.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, members of the Health and Government Operations Committee. My name is Supriya Gimire. I am a 16-year-old high school senior, and I will be speaking on behalf of the Non-Resident Nepali Association. I'm here today to testify in regards to House Bill 676. Dasai is known as a holiday commonly celebrated among the Nepali community. The main idea of Dasai is to celebrate the victory of good over evil. Being the first state to acknowledge Dasai would be a huge leap towards equality. This not only would benefit the Nepali community, allowing them to celebrate their holiday freely, but it would also allow Maryland to be seen as a state who cares about the voice of their minority groups. Being a 16-year-old Nepali female who has been in the school system for nearly 13 years, I noticed a couple things after migrating to America. I noticed that being exposed mainly to a culture outside of my own at such a young age slowly caused me to decrease the knowledge that I possessed about my own culture. The holidays in Nepal are not commonly taught about in our American school system. I mean, I personally never went to school on Dasai, but this only resulted in me falling behind all the other children and missing out on my education. The diversity in Maryland is truly astonishing, seeing the beauty of every culture come together in order to create a community. We as America need to strive to be a country that respects all holidays and accepts the importance of cultures everywhere. Being the first state to acknowledge Dasai, again, would be a huge leap towards equality. In order to spread equality throughout the rest of the country, we need to start somewhere. And where better to start than right here in Maryland? Thank you so much, Madam Chair, for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. We really appreciate it. Next, we have Ms. Acharya.
Hi, thank you.
My pleasure.
Hello, members of this committee. My name is Arya Acharya, and I wanted to speak a bit about Dasai today. Dasai is an important holiday for me and many others in the Nepali community, and I've had a lot of fun and important things to do throughout the day, and it is usually celebrated around the fall time. I personally celebrate with all of my friends and family, but with the fun that comes with it, I have had school scheduled for 7 of the 8 years I celebrated during the school year, and I'm only in 9th grade. I almost always feel a burden thinking about all of the work that I am missing, and this burden gets a lot more prominent as you start to reach higher grades, which is challenging to deal with since you have more responsibilities during the holiday as you get older as well. When I think about the school systems not recognizing my community and the holidays I celebrate, it makes me feel like my community is really unrepresented, which is unacceptable right now because of the growing number of Nepali Americans in Maryland. Maryland has the 5th biggest Nepali population in the US, and that is why representation is so important right now. We need to step up and listen to the needs of our community. Ignoring this issue just shows a poor reflection on our school system's ability to reach our needs, and it leaves a negative precedent for the future. Young children who grow up celebrating should be able to see their culture as something that is recognized, and this bill will make sure students have off from school on Dasai, which will help get that recognition. Not only would this remove that burden I was speaking of earlier, it would also show my community that our school systems actually care about us and our holidays. This is an experience that is shared throughout the Nepali community, and it is not just me that is upset about this issue. We must let students enjoy Dasai the way it was originally intended to be celebrated. So for those reasons, I strongly urge you to support HB 676. Thank you guys so much for your time.
And thank you for your testimony today. The committee appreciates it. Next, we have Ms. Prajapati.
Good afternoon, members of Health and Government Operation Committee. My name is Saroj Prajapati, and I'm the president of Nepal Education and Cultural Center, NECC, based in Billsville, Maryland. It's a nonprofit organization to promote Nepali culture and education in the USA. I'm here today to testify on SB 676, General Provision Commemorative Days Dasai Day. As a Nepali origin living in the United States of America, it is very important for me to keep my culture and tradition alive. Just like any other festival of Nepal, Dasai plays even more important role in my life. Dasai is the important and greatest Hindu festival for Nepalese around the world. Nepalese people around the world save their vacation days so they can return home when the Dasai festival is happening and attend it. It is important time when the entire country of Nepal is united in its values and identity. The generations of people of Nepal mainly celebrates this festival to keep their cultural heritage to pass on to their next generation. It is a festival and bring happiness and deliver the message of unity among Nepal. Dasai starts according to the Hindu calendar of Ashwin, the 7th month, which coincide with the Shukla Paksha. Although it's not possible for the people outside of Nepal to take time off 15 days from the school and our workplace, they at least observe one day from their busy schedule to celebrate the main festival of their country of origin. There are many other festivals from different areas of the world observed and honored in USA, but Nepali people haven't had opportunity to present themselves in the importance of Dasai into the mainstream. The growing number of Nepali immigrants in the area definitely making the presence of the community. Therefore, Dasai should be on the state calendar and county calendar. I strongly support Delegate Bhandari's bill SB 076. Thank you.
Thank you for your service and for your testimony. Are there any questions on this bill for this panel? Seeing none, thank you so much for your testimony today. This concludes the bill hearing on House Bill 676. Next, we have on our agenda is House Bill 199, which will be actually presented by Delegate Wilson's intern, Ms. Nicole Hubbard, and it's actually Maryland State Sport Lacrosse. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Hi, can you please introduce yourself and you can get started?
Okay.
Welcome to the committee.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the Health and Government Operations Committee. My name is Nicole Huber, and I'm an intern for Delegate C.T. Wilson. I will be presenting the oral testimony on behalf of Delegate Wilson for HB 199, Maryland State Sport Lacrosse. The purpose of this bill is to simply change the state sport of Maryland from jousting to lacrosse. Currently, lacrosse is the team sport of Maryland, and jousting is the current official sport of Maryland. Jousting became the official sport of Maryland in 1962, as Maryland was the first state to adopt an official sport. Jousting became very popular, and tournaments have been held in Maryland since early colonial times, but became increasingly popular after the Civil War. Although it was popular, jousting is not so popular anymore. Jousting is done through clubs, and over the years, there has been a decrease in the number of participants. Lacrosse is widely popular across the country, especially here in Maryland. Lacrosse has desirability, as well as many historical remarks were made here and are still held within the state. Although jousting is as equally important, it is evident that lacrosse seems to hold a significantly more amount of popularity, tournaments, teams, games, and even clubs. Lacrosse is known as one of the oldest sports in North America, as it became popular on college campuses in the late 1800s. The University of Maryland fielded its first team in 1910. In 1926, the first women's lacrosse team in the country was established at the Bryn Mawr School in Baltimore. Lacrosse made its Olympic debut in 1928 with Maryland's Johns Hopkins University team representing the United States. Maryland not only wins, but hosts competitive lacrosse events. For example, from June 23rd to July 2nd, 2005, Annapolis, Maryland hosted the World Cup International Federation of Women's Lacrosse Associations. The NCAA men's lacrosse was hosted at M&T Bank Stadium in Baltimore in 2014. There are roughly 186 teams that play in the NCAA Division I lacrosse. This is consisting of about 71 men's and 115 women's teams in 2018. There is an expansion that means nearly 30,000 players are playing collegiate lacrosse each year. Maryland is home to the Lacrosse National Hall of Fame and Museum. There are 240 high schools in the state of Maryland that currently have lacrosse teams, along with 24 colleges that offer scholarships and recruiting opportunities in the state of Maryland. As you just heard, jousting is not as popular as it used to be. There are more opportunities through local schools, colleges, little leagues, and clubs for lacrosse than there are for jousting today. Although jousting still happens in the state of Maryland, it is evident that since lacrosse is a state team sport and holds more popularity and opportunities, it should be the official sport of Maryland. In conclusion, this bill will remove redundancy of having a team sport and official sport from our state code by removing an Arkan sport and replacing it with a sport that is more widely practiced, thus bringing Maryland into the 21st century. Furthermore, this is a simple bill with no fiscal effect. As such, this bill represents a small but necessary adjustment to the code. Therefore, I urge a favorable report for HB 199, and thank you for your time today.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for Ms. Huber? Delegate Johnson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I understand this was a little controversial issue in the past. So, and I think, I know jousting is probably a little older than lacrosse, but my question is, did anyone reach out to the Lacrosse Association to get them involved in this decision? I know it, even though it's not as visible in Maryland, it's still pretty popular in Maryland.
I don't have the answer to that question as of right now, but I can get back to you by the end of this afternoon.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Excellent. Any other questions? Seeing none, thank you so much for your testimony. You can tell Mr. Wilson, Delegate Wilson, that you did an outstanding job. Next, we have, actually, this concludes the testimony on House Bill 199. And now we have the last bill of the day, House Bill 762. Delegate Kittleman, state destination, state astronomical feature, Crab Nebula. Good afternoon, Delegate.
Thank you very much. I have a constituent who brought this to me. I'm sorry, I'm losing my place here. Because he thought it would be cheerful and cheer everybody up. The bill would make the Crab Nebula the state astronomical. It's been a hard day. Feature, I think, is the appropriate. Yes,
it is
state
feature.
astronomical
Yes.
feature, and there's a wonderful reason for it. First of all, it looks like a crab, and that is certainly Maryland. And there's another link. Barbara Mikulski, Senator Mikulski, along with two others, had an instrumental role in the Hubble telescope, which took the picture of the Crab Nebula and saw it. And if you're interested, this is, let's see, there we go. That's kind of what it looks like. And if you look at it hard, you can see that it is a crab. The Crab Nebula is a supernova remnant, which was actually seen by Japanese and Chinese astronomers 1,000 years ago, and they used a 36-inch telescope. And they saw the explosion that created the Crab Nebula, which is now 11 light years in width. It's fascinating. I'm sure my constituent can tell you more about it, but the only other thing I wanted to say is I'm hoping you will give this bill a positive vote. Many years ago, my husband introduced a bill to name the state fossil that passed. And you may not know it, but Maryland has, among the most of any state, the most symbols. And when I talked to the fifth graders who were doing the simulated congressional hearings, sometimes they asked me to open the day with a speech. And when you're talking to fifth graders, you want to be interesting. So I have made pictures of all of our state symbols, and I take them and I hold them up and I get them to guess. And I get them to guess what is our state tree, what is our state, and they're very good. So it's a lot of fun, and I think this would be a fun bill. And if Matthew Stubblefield, if you are here, would you give testimony?
Thank you, Delegate. Mr. Stubblefield, will you be so kind and give us your testimony?
Hello, my name is Matthew Stubblefield. I'd like to start by thanking the committee for inviting me and allowing me to speak to you today. I have always enjoyed looking at galaxies and nebulae. They're very beautiful and peaceful things. They're so unimaginably large, and yet being a part of them has always been a very grounding thing to me. Because of that, I follow an artist online named Amy Ray Hill, who takes these beautiful things and puts them on different pottery things so you can incorporate them in your everyday life. One day she shared a picture of a teapot with a crab nebula on it. Obviously, the first thing I thought was, crabs, I'm hungry. But the next thing was to go and look and see, is this associated with Maryland? Maryland is rightly so very proud of our crabs, and we've incorporated it in so many different things and made so many different parts of it part of our identity that it just seemed a shame to limit it to the earth. So when I found out that we had not tied claimed the Crab Nebula as our own, I immediately reached out to my state level representatives, and Delegate Kettleman was nice enough to take this and run with it, because it just seems like a very important part of Maryland is crabs, and this beautiful thing up in the sky is just a very nice way to try and tie us to more things. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for this panel? We have first Delegate Lewis.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Delegate Kettleman, for this very interesting bill. As someone who was born under the sign of the crab, I have a very, friendly feelings towards all crab symbols. Thank you. My question was for your panelist, Mr.
Stubblefield?
Yes. And I was just wondering, I could not see his face. I thought it was very strange to not be able to see someone who was testifying.
Sorry.
Go.
Okay.
Okay. Hi. So thank you, Mr. Stubblefield. I was just curious what made you interested in choosing an astrological symbol for the state. Was there any anything interesting behind that of all the symbols?
Well, it was first because crabs are so tied in with our state. And when I saw it, and I love space, I think there's just so many beautiful things up there, and trying to tie them into more everyday life, I think is, I said, just something peaceful and relaxing, and way to try and help think outside of the current situation. And it's just with all the bad things that have been going on lately, having something nice and grounding like that, or friendly, nice, easy thing seemed like a good idea. And another way to make Maryland unique, because in the little research I didn't see other states having state astronomical features. I know some will have constellations or stuff, but something else to try and help make Maryland unique and special and celebrate what we are.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you, Delegate, Madam Chair.
My pleasure. Any other questions for this panel? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony today. This concludes the bill hearing on House Bill 762, and it concludes the work of the committee for these hearings. Madam Chairman, are there any announcements?
You're gone?
You're muted.
Yes, thank you for asking me. You all should know that we have a voting session today at 5 o'clock. You should have gotten that information. There should be a vote list. As I told you, we don't have as much warning or advance notice of what is on the list. Today's list got put together rather late because we had a couple subcommittees meet. We will try to do our very best to get information out to you, and in future we'll probably send you an incomplete list and then add things to it, and some things may be subtracted, but I would rather err on the side of giving you as much information as we can, as quickly as we can, and then adjusting it as needed. So I'll see you all at 5 o'clock this evening. Thank you very much. And now, Madam Chair, back to you.
Thank you so much, Chairman Pendergrass. Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon, everyone.